So I ran across this lady, and I'm going to try to say her name right. And there's a surprise for people that live here because she's got to hear a connection. April Shprintz. Now, I'm going to make sure I do this right. She is an author. She's a veteran. She's a speaker, a podcaster, a business accelerator, and the creator of the generosity culture, which we're going to find out more about. I'm going to unmute her. I'm going to give her a 3, 2, 1 countdown. Here she comes. April, 3, 2, 1. How you doing?
Hello, I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. How'd I do on the name?
You did awesome. And I would normally be kind, but you really got it right.
I appreciate it. I told you beforehand, you are the secret is you're actually from this area. We're recording this in the Chattanooga, Tennessee area. I'm from a little place called Eastridge. Mm-hmm. You're from Saudi Daisy. So if I messed up, you knew to give me a break because I'm from Eastridge.
There you go.
Yeah. I kind of want you to tell people what you do currently for a living. What do you do? And that's a great genesis for us to kind of backtrack.
Absolutely. So for the past 5 years, I've had a consulting firm that helps both scale and help businesses grow, as well as turn around businesses that are in trouble or having issue.
And you started all of this, though, your journey started from Saudi Daisy, Tennessee, and then you got into the military. And I cut that conversation short off there because your story is great. So tell everybody how you got in the military, because we'll start from the beginning.
So I will say I was probably going to be voted least likely to join the military. If you knew me, went to high school with me, I went to Hickson High School. I am definitely a girly girl, have some grit, but I would not have been voted most likely to join any branch of the military. However, I wanted to be a broadcaster, and I came from a family of really humble means. So very early on, everyone made it clear, if you want to be the first person in our family to go to college, that's on you. And so I assumed that I would do well academically and I would get a scholarship. So that's what I worked towards my whole high school and even before that career. And I was very fortunate. I was offered local scholarships, but I really wanted to go to what I thought was the best broadcasting school in the nation. And at that time, because a lot of professors were former producers from ABC in New York and some other great networks, it was Boston University. And I was accepted under early decision. I was very fortunate. I got a scholarship. The scholarship only covered about a third of the tuition. And so for me, $20,000 a year was just more than I could take. So interestingly, I ended up paying to go a semester at UTC, which was a very good lesson for me because I had thumbed my nose up at their scholarship because I was young and I knew everything and I was very special. And going there was fantastic because it showed me that whole don't put all your eggs in one basket lesson in real life. But I met someone there in my first semester who was going to get his accounting degree and become a CPA and had been in the Air Force. And he just casually mentioned one day, we were at night school because I was working full time during the day. He mentioned, oh yeah, the Air Force paid 100% for my degree. And I was like, they did? And I know that was in the pitch, but I'd never really paid attention, right? And I said, but you're an accountant. Like, you don't shoot guns and drive tanks. And I mean, this is literally the lack of knowledge I had about the service. No one in my family had been in the service since World War II, my grandfather. And so he was like, no, there are all sorts of jobs. And I was like, do they have broadcasters? Do they have people on TV? And he said yes. And I literally, first he said yes. And he said, but they have to live overseas. And I thought, even better. I want to see the world. I stood up in the middle of class and left and drove to the recruiter's office right then. I was like, I'm going.
Wow. So when you go into the recruiter and you tell them you want to be a broadcaster, is that how that works? I was not in the military. Thank you for your service. But is that how that works? Can you just say, I want to be this?
No, not at all. You can't. That did not stop me, however, from approaching it that way and saying, look, I'm here. I would like to be a broadcaster. Right. And he was like, warm body, I'm glad you're here. Let me look up your ASVAB scores, which is the military entrance exam. Luckily, you got extra credit for that if you took it in high school, because I had no intention of going. But at some point, an English teacher said, you get extra credit if you take it. And he was convinced because I had somehow, and to this day, I don't know how this happened, but I scored very, very high on it. And the reason I'm surprised by that is there was a whole slew of engineering type questions where I was just like, because they were things that my mind doesn't work that way. But he said, oh no, you should really go in and be OSI, which is like the Air Force's version of the FBI. Because at the time I was working for a private investigator and I had these scores. He was like, you don't even need a high score to be a broadcaster. They'll let anyone do that. You just have to do an audition tape. And no one from here has ever done that. And so he really hard sold me to do something else. And I took a pen that I had with me because I had like a little pad folio, and I wrote in real big bold letters, broadcasting or bust. And I turned it around and I was like, if you want me to get in, this is how we do it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, here's the frustrating part. When you get somebody really interesting with a good story on, and you know you don't have enough time, we could spend a whole podcast on each level of your life. So I don't want to skip forward a little bit because I do want to talk about the journalism part. So you get into the military, you do have a broadcast TV and anchor and producer background while you're in the Air Force. First of all, was it what you thought it would be? And let's take a second and talk about the state of journalism now. Is that something you would still do now if you could?
So I would tell you that the job itself was better than I thought it would be. And that's great because I failed my first audition and I went through quite a bit I actually go through this story in my book to get there. So when I got there, it exceeding all of my expectations was amazing. I got to do every facet of broadcasting, from radio to reporting to on-site reporting. I got to host a NASCAR race via satellite from Afghanistan with Fox Sports. I mean, they gave me these incredible experiences. So that was amazing. And I thought for a long time that when I got out, I would continue to be a broadcaster. But the way that we see the media today, it was in a lot of ways making those changes right around the time that I would have been exiting. And it was very much, if it bleeds, it leads. And anyone who is familiar with me and the generosity culture and how much I care about mindset knows that I believe you get what you focus on. So for me, would I still do that today? I would, if it was in a niche way where I could tell stories of things that were empowering to others and were focused on helping people achieve things and make their lives better. I would not again be in a role where I was reporting on whatever terrible thing was happening in the world.
Yeah, I think journalism now, and I actually do a couple of podcasts a month that are standing podcasts with friends of mine. And I think journalism and media now is so cliquish. I mean, we just got to get the air quote engagement. So headlines aren't always accurate. And it's like you said, we don't really care if it's 100% truth. If we are first to get the headline out. And I was a journalist. I think I told you this off air. I was a journalism major my first year in college. And my counselor came to me and said, hey, you're very creative, but you're absolutely horrible at any sort of sentence diagram. You don't know where to put a period or a comma. You need to go do something else. This was when we didn't have computers. We had it was the late 80s when I was in college. So anyway, I love journalism, the practice of it. I'm not crazy on how it is now. You said you would still do it if you could tell the story that would help people. But fast forward again, I hate to do these big leaps.
No, you're fine. Go for it.
Well, I want to stay a little bit on
time travel.
It is time travel, and I want to be respectful of your time, but that's kind of podcasting allows you to do that a little bit, right? You could see
100%. 100%. Yeah. I really enjoy and love podcasting. And I started just guesting on podcasts like I am today and really enjoyed that. And candidly, the lazy part of me loves this because it's like you show up, you have an amazing conversation with someone. There's no production. You don't have to do anything other than get there. But what I also wanted to do was provide information and insight and help to the folks who might not be in the position to hire someone like me, whether it be me or someone else, to give them that insight that they need as a leader, as an entrepreneur for their business. And this was a way that I felt that I could give that to them without it being a costly thing. Now, it costs the most valuable thing in the world, their time.
Right.
But a lot of times, even though time is more valuable than anything else, we still feel like we have more of that than we do some of our other resources.
Well, and as long as there's a fair exchange there too, right? I don't mind spending the time with April as long as when I leave there, I feel like I've gotten something. I've listened to several of your podcasts over the last week or so preparing for this, and I love the podcast. Some are a little longer, some are a little shorter. I had a company for years, an advertising company called Connect Marketing, and the genesis behind it was kind of what you're talking about on a much more local level, nothing within about a 50, maybe 75 mile radius. But I saw a lot of small business owners that were having to wear all the hats, the janitor, the inventory, the salesperson, and they couldn't afford a big ad agency or marketing company. But they're the ones that had the real problems. Because if you're big enough, I can go pay $70,000 for a marketing director.
Sure.
And so I think what you're hitting on is perfect, because as a business owner, I'm driving into work. If I've got 10, 15, 20 minutes to listen to a podcast and pick up something, that's a fair exchange of value that I think you're offering.
100%, 100%. Yeah. And that's the goal. How do you help?
And so we're going to stay on podcast in a minute, because I want to get your take on long podcasts versus short podcasts. Do you have a rule of thumb on how long your podcasts are?
So it's interesting. I have changed my opinion on this over time, over doing 70 or 80 episodes. I actually had 2 podcasts going on simultaneously within the one that I had. So I would have one 10-minute or less episode called Mindset Minutes, where I would really focus on helping people develop a mindset that was winning and worked for them. And then I had my interviews, which that was very much like the way that you do it, which is, if we get rolling, let's just go. What I found, though, was the downloads of the 2, unless it is a big name, someone who's very, well known within the business community, were so much higher on that 10 minutes or less, because it's so digestible. I have time to finish this. I can do this right now. So it's interesting. I do a LinkedIn Live now that I also simulcast on Facebook, and it is 10 minutes to win. And it is an interview kind of setup with a co-host, but it's 10 minutes or less, because I think, again, those are easily digestible. I know that I'll have 2 or 3 nuggets in there for people, and that no matter how busy they are, they have the ability to spend that time.
Yeah, I do some shorter solo podcasts that range between 3 up to 10 or 15 minutes. And then I have long form. I've had conversations for an hour, hour and a half, but I will, in my heart, I disagree. But in my head, I'll say something out loud that would push back on myself on this. Everybody thinks they're the next Joe Rogan, right? Everybody thinks they can do a 3-hour.
I don't.
Well, the problem with it is when you get into podcasting, I like these kind of conversations, but you said something before we came on, always leave them wanting more rather than I'm glad it's over.
Yes.
And I think Joe Rogan just got in a lot of egos and go, everybody loves long format. No, they love long format with the right person. Clint may not necessarily be the right person for a 3-hour conversation. So I take what you're saying with a grain of salt. I'm gonna test that theory. I'm gonna go look at my downloads. I haven't really checked that out.
It'll be interesting, right? Just to see. And for me, it was easier because literally now the one thing that could skew it is, are people just more interested in mindset itself than mindset in a lens of business, talking with leaders and entrepreneurs. So that's not 100% empirical data, but because it's the same podcast on 2 separate days of the week, it was just really interesting to see that big difference in the downloads.
Well, you said a keyword, mindset, and I know what you do now is 100% focused on people's mindset. And I want to talk about a light bulb moment, because you were in the business world. You were, creating dollars for companies and for yourself. You were generating revenue and helping businesses. When was the light bulb moment? And there's a key phrase. I want to get it perfect, because we're going to talk about your book too. But where's the phrase at? I wrote it down. Oh, here it is. You realize that helping people wasn't what you do. It is who you are, basically. Yes. So explain that lot. Was that a moment that you can remember, or was it a gradual progression?
So I think it was both, to be candid, Clint. I think it was a gradual progression of, I found ways to do what I do now in every job I had. And that's where the joy was. And there came a point when I was involved in a really successful startup. I was very fortunate to be there. I was their top salesperson, and they were building for an IPO. And they ultimately did do a $7 billion IPO. But because of that, as a salesperson, there was no cap to your compensation. You could earn untold amounts of money. And the CEO said, I want to pay you more than I make. And I said, we're going to make that happen. And it did. And so that was amazing, right? So financially, everything's taken care of. And I have really a golden ticket, if you will, in this role where I love the people I work with. I love the clients I serve. I am on this amazing trajectory. And I realized that the place that I was getting the most joy was in training up and coming salespeople, hoping that they could then overtake me as the best salesperson, right? Or the top salesperson, in helping people grow their career, in just doing all these things, building the organization, the structure, the way we were doing things. all these things that were not technically in my job description, but because we were still a relatively small startup with only a little over 100 employees, I was really given carte blanche to do whatever extra things I wanted to do. And I realized that I got much more out of helping other people be successful than I did out of personal success. And I thought, you know what? I don't just want to do this for financial institutions. I don't just want to do this in this industry. I want to help the people that need me the most. So with no bigger plan than that, I left that company. And I know lots of folks thought I was absolutely crazy, but I knew in my heart that my purpose was to do more for more people.
Well, I think there's 4 different podcasts inside this one podcast. I do sales and business coaching. I don't have many clients. I have 11 clients just because I don't have that much time, and I try to keep them is controlled my time as much as possible. And the thing that I think that we struggle with, I'll use myself. I think the thing I struggle with the most is realizing 2 things. One is if I get to a certain place in life, if there's another thing I want to get to, if there's another growth, I've got to change my thinking. And a lot of times I keep reaching for the next level without realizing I've got to move my feet too. You know, I can reach for it, but my feet have to go with me, which is my thinking. And then I actually said this to somebody the other day. We all want to worry about the fruit on the tree and we forget what we're planting. I want an orange, but I keep planting apple seeds. Well, an apple seed's not going to grow an orange. You know, I want different things in my life, but I don't change anything about where it comes from. I actually will tell you a funny story and then I'll hand it off to you if this resonates. I got on a call with somebody. They were considering using me and they said, listen, I am busy. You've got some pretty good recommendations, but I just need somebody to fix me. And I went, nope, I can't do that. I don't know how to fix people. But so when you've started this journey, where did you start off at? And is that something that you've encountered too? People come to you with businesses or individuals and they're wanting you to air quote, fix them.
So when I started this journey, candidly, I thought I was going to be doing something a little different than what I ended up doing. I thought I'd be helping people build sales organizations, training people on speaking and things like that, because that's really what I thought the most of my experience was in. But then I realized, because I had a friend contact me and ask me to turn around a failing company. And he had someone who really needed some help. It was losing over $500,000 a year, and it was bleeding the individual owner dry. And I said, absolutely, I'll do that. So for me, it's been more that I learned what I was going to be doing than it was that I decided, which I think candidly, most business owners will find that your clients will tell you what it is that they need from you. And as far as folks looking for me to fix them, I will say that the work that I do with companies in particular can be very difficult. And it takes a certain mindset to want to do what it is that I will help you do. And it's amazing. It's worth it. When you talk to other people, I'll say, look, I'm going to tell you right now that we're going to do this, and it's going to look to you like it's an amazing idea, and it's going to change your life and your company. But at some point, we're going to be in the valley of suck. We're going to go over this hill and we're going to be down here. And this is when you're going to be like, why did I ever agree to do this? And then it'll get a little better. It'll get a little better. And then all of a sudden you'll be like, I can't believe I did that. It's better than I ever imagined. So for me, someone who says, I want you to fix me, who isn't willing to put in the work and do, this isn't a real thing, but do the virtual 100-mile run uphill in the snow wearing a weighted vest, that person runs screaming from me. Yeah. No one comes to me and says, can you fix me? Because everyone around me seems to know that I'm going to go through it with you and do this difficult thing, but we're going to do something really hard. There are no quick painkillers. I'm going to teach you how to take your vitamins.
See, I love that. I broke my nose several times. The second time I broke it, it healed wrong. I didn't get to the doctor in time. So they had to actually re-break my nose. And I think a lot of times our habits in our business get that way. We get so used to doing things the wrong way. We want to fix it without the pain, but there's got to be pain involved.
Well, and it is usually that they have to believe that the pain of leaving it how it is worse than the pain of doing it. And I'm very candid with folks on my estimation of what the level of pain will be, much like your doctor probably was. Like, look, how much does a crooked nose bother you? Because I'm going to break it again in order for it to be right.
Yeah, I couldn't breathe that on one side. I was like,
and because you couldn't breathe, it was worth him breaking your nose. And I think, that for some people. And that's more for the turnarounds. When you're scaling, it's not anywhere near as painful. It's just normal growing pains. And you're going to go through them, whether you scale with me or you scale on your own. It's just, what is the speed that you want to do that in?
Have you been surprised on everybody's different definition of accountability? Because everybody that I know at least goes, I love accountability, until they face real accountability. And I use myself as a thing. I love accountability. But I have a friend of mine that has an online nutritional coaching business. She has 4 coaches. They do business around the world. And so she says, hey, let me help you. This was a couple years ago. She goes, I just want to show you what I do. I didn't really need, I was boxing at the time. She goes, I just want to show you what I do. I'm like, okay. She goes, go through my program for 60 days. I'm like, all right. She goes, send me before pictures. And I'm like, okay. And then I started taking the before pictures. I'm like, hey, this process sucks. I don't like the before pictures at all. I'm not really crazy about your definition of accountability. I don't think I want to send you these before pictures very much. So it surprises me. Everybody likes accountability until they got to actually have accountability.
I don't know. I guess it depends on the person. I haven't encountered that as much in my line of work, but I completely agree that there are folks that that's not what they want. I think those folks wouldn't even agree to work with me. Yeah. I think that they'd be like, nah.
One conversation and they're like, nope.
I'm good. I'm good. I think I don't need this.
The book that you wrote, Magic Blue Rocks, The Secret to Doing Anything, was that sort of in the middle of this process of starting your new business? When did you write that on this journey of yours?
No, I actually wrote this in August of 2020.
Ah, there we go.
And interestingly enough, the first draft of it just poured out of me in a week. And I was encouraged to write it by someone who is a mentor that I really think just the world of, who is a boxing promoter and actually puts on some of the biggest boxing matches in the world. And he came up under Don King. And he had gotten some fantastic advice from Don King, which he passed on to me. And I just happened to actually post a video of that tiny little house that I grew up in on LinkedIn. And it, without overusing the term, went viral. And I got hundreds of messages from folks who said, I can't believe that's where you came from. And it being my own house, I didn't understand how jarring it was to people to see that I had lived in this tiny little house, this little roof with oak trees holding the porch up still, to this day. And people were so moved by it and inspired by the idea of what kind of journey someone could have. He reached out to me and he said, April, I feel like you owe it to people to share your story so that other people know that it's possible for them. And that's really the genesis for the book. It's 6 short stories about my life and the lessons I learned in each. But the overarching lesson is this: I have had tremendous good fortune, tremendous success in my life. And I am not smarter or more special or more anything than anyone else. But I had a mindset of belief that I could do these things. And that is the only difference. So the book is really taking people through how they can cultivate that mindset of belief in themselves, because I believe anything that we think of that we want to do is possible for us. It's just finding how.
The title, Magic Blue Rocks, tell the genesis behind the title.
So when I was 6 years old, I found out that I was poor from one of my classmates. And he was a super smart kid, and he deduced it really, this just really smart guy. And it was this moment of shame and horror for me because I had a single mom. She was a waitress. All these questions he asked me that were common for poor people were true. And all of a sudden, all these memories flooded back of days we didn't have electricity and the church bringing us food. And oh my gosh, we're poor. And I didn't know that much about money or being poor, but I knew it was something I did not want to be. And so I was convinced that I had to solve this. And I felt like I was 6 years old, but I felt like if my mother could fix it, she would have done it already. So it was up to me. And I went home. And I thought, I need to start a business, because at my age, the only successful people I knew were on TV, and they all seemed to have businesses. And candidly, I modeled the idea of having a business over George Jefferson with, moving on up. He had the dry cleaners. I couldn't do dry cleaning, but I wanted to move on up.
Yeah.
And so I found nothing in my house that I could sell, because I realized I didn't have any skills. I didn't even have a bike. Like, I wasn't going to be able to get a job. So I'm going to sell something, and then I'll get money from selling things. And there wasn't anything that I wanted to part with that I thought was sellable, but I did see a blue marker on the floor. So I just grabbed it and put it in my pocket. And then I went outside and we have this driveway full of gravel. And I thought, if I color those rocks blue, they'll be special because rocks usually aren't blue. And I can do anything I believe I can do. Like at 6 years old, I was very certain about this. So there were a lot of times that grownups would say, well, you can't do that. And then I'd go do it. And I was like, so they don't know. But I can do anything I believe I can do. I'll put that belief in these rocks and they'll be magic. And then people will want to buy them. So I spent the whole evening and I recruited my sister to help me coloring these rocks blue, and I sold them at school the next day. And the first chapter of my book talks about how well that went down at school and what I learned from it. But it was also the impetus of the book because, you know, there is magic in the mindset of belief. And whether you believe in magic or not, no one could have predicted that a little girl coming from where I came from with the background I had and the resources I had would be able to do the things that have happened over the years through lots of blessings, lots of lucky breaks, lots of people helping me. But that one constant is that winning mindset of believing.
Yeah, that's a great story. See, I'm going to keep you another few minutes, but I want to ask you now if down the road, can I get you back on for maybe we'll focus in on one thing, because I got 4 questions and I'm not going to ask them except for this one. Your writing process. You said the first one just kind of poured out of you. And I know you've got other books you've been part of. And I want to make sure we talk about the Standing O Salute. Is that the name of the other book you're part of? And that goes to a charity called Blankets of Hope. Is that correct?
It does. Yeah, it's a fantastic, it's a book of life lessons, all from veterans. And it's a collaboration, an anthology. And I'll tell you that if you are familiar with any of the famous veterans in the United States who have made tremendous impact to our country, those are the folks that are in this book. I have no idea why I was asked compared to them. I'm just honored to be among them. But 100% of the proceeds go to an amazing nonprofit called Blankets of Hope. And you can look it up and see how it benefits those experiencing homelessness, and then also children by teaching them empathy and leadership skills.
And I'll put links to all of this in the show notes when it goes out on podcast platforms. But do you have a writing process? Because I know you're involved in other writing projects, but are you the type of person that is very regimented? Like, I'm going to write from 8 to 10. Are you the person that keeps a notebook and just writes down things as you're inspired?
So I'm more of the regimented, and I really didn't understand the writing process. I didn't even know if I could write, to be candid. I mean, I'd written lots of news stories and I do a lot of writing on LinkedIn, but I wasn't sure I could be a writer. And I slated a week and just decided I was going to write these stories, one each day. And that would become the book. Now, what's funny is I had this idea that what I created would be the book. And it really isn't. Your first draft really is a draft, and it was good. And I thought it would help people. But where the magic really happened for me, there was definitely magic in pouring that out. But then there was magic in coming back with the editors and revisiting it and writing more dialogue or sharing more feelings. And I believe now something that I'd heard writers say and didn't understand, which is a book becomes a book in the editing process.
Yeah. That critical feedback, are you comfortable with that? Is that something you embrace? Do you like having other people? I love
feedback.
Yeah.
It is the gift that keeps on giving. Now, having said that, the one thing about feedback that can send me into a panic is if the feedback makes me realize I have got to up level. I've got to up my game. For example, in the book, the second editor really went through and was like, flush this out, write more dialogue. And I had fear come up because I was like, I don't know if I'm good at dialogue. I got good at it. But the only time that feedback for me is a tough process, because I love it, it is the gift that keeps on giving, is when I think what someone wants from me means I've got to elevate and get to a better place. Because I'm like, can I do that? Can I do it in time? And I pressure myself to do it.
Do you work in your business? Do you work with mostly teams and businesses or individuals? Do you have certain demographic you work with, or do you just provide the content? How do people, in other words, who can you help?
In some way, shape, or form, I feel like I can help everyone. You're not necessarily going to have to pay me to do that.
Yeah.
So when I work with companies, it's usually CEOs, C-suite, executive team that are hiring me either to come in and help the company or do mindset and leadership workshops, or maybe they're hiring me to come and speak. Having said that, I do a lot of content that is 100% free. There are free resources on my website. My YouTube channel has lots of advice for entrepreneurs, different shows, different things. And that is free. I also have the podcast, and just any way that I can share things. I actually just did a giveaway to libraries of my book, because I want the people who are the least likely to be able to have a book in their budget. I want those people to be able to read it. So I feel like I can help anyone and everyone. The one thing that is the same is they all have a mindset of wanting to grow. And that's the kind of people that I work with. I work with all different industries, usually small to medium-sized businesses, revenue between 5 and 100 million, because that's where we can make the biggest difference when it comes to actually turning the company around or scaling it. But much bigger companies, if it's speaking or something like that. But 100%, what all those people have in common is that mindset of, I want to be better, and I want a mindset that works more for me.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm going to do this. I'm really respectful. We're at 32 minutes, and I've done pretty good.
You've done awesome.
Yeah, I know, but I've got 19 questions over here. We're going to save it for the next podcast.
We can do a speed round.
Well, I was just so with that. Here's what I normally do with my first time guest, and I've had pretty big guests on, and I play it with all of them. If you're okay with a would you rather,
play it.
Okay,
whatever it is, I'll play it.
Here we go. Questions for April. You can only have one for the rest of your life: pancakes or waffles?
Pancakes.
All right. There's no right or wrong answers, but if there were, I would have to go with waffles, but that's okay. We're going to go with pancakes. I'll give you credit for that one, though. That's okay. It's all right. You can only have one vacation for the rest of your life: mountains or beach?
Beach.
Superpower: speed or strength?
Speed.
Would you rather be able to read minds or predict the future? This one's the slowest one for me to figure out when somebody asks me that.
Read minds or predict the future? Predict the future. If you could read minds, then it's too much clutter. I don't want to hear what everybody's thinking.
That would terrify me to really read minds. I was like, I really don't want to know. I like being in the dark on some of that. All right. So the last question really is, are you a reader, a podcast listener, or you listen to books? Are you a reader or a listener?
Yes.
Awesome. Is there something you're reading or listening to now that's pretty cool that you're enjoying that you've just found recently?
Right now I'm in the middle of, candidly, I tend to have 4 or 5 books going at once, which is why I said, yes, I'm reading some, I'm listening to others. It depends on what else I'm doing. But someone just gifted me a book of letters to my younger self. And it is just some really phenomenal women like Maya Angelou and some really amazing folks in the broadcasting world and all over, and writing a letter to themselves at any point beyond now. Madeleine Albright, there are all these kinds of women. And it is so fantastic to read the advice that they would give themselves and how enlightening it is, and hoping to gain from those lessons. Could I learn something from someone's older self so that I don't have to write that same letter to my younger self?
It's very cool. Last question for you, ma'am. Hobby, what do you like to do when you're not helping other people embrace a new mindset and become better versions of themselves? Are you an outdoors person? Are you music? What is your hobby that you like to do?
Well, so I do love the outdoors, and my dog Cowboy and I do a lot of dog parking, but my personal hobby is Taekwondo. I love practicing a martial art.
How long have you been doing that?
Actually, not as long as you'd think. I earned my black belt before I went into the service. And then I actually started practicing again about a year ago, because like many others, I binged watched on Netflix, The Return of the Karate Kid. And I was like, I could still do that. I want to do it again.
My daughter and I, she's almost 18, when she's with me, she stays with me all the time. And we got binge watching The Karate Kid, and it was cool for 2 reasons. It was super cheesy, so she liked it.
Cobra Kai. I just called it the wrong name, but yeah.
But we watched all the seasons, and I loved it because it reminded me of being young again. She liked it because it was kind of cheesy, and then she's like old retro and the cars and the music and stuff.
Oh yeah.
And so I'm glad you referenced that. All right. April, I'm gonna let you go. Be respectful of your time, but I do want to give you a standing invite that at any point in time you want to jump back on. I'd love to have deeper dives, maybe in journalism, and maybe really about the mindset workshop, what that kind of skeleton of what that would look like, because I find that fascinating that there are things out there that you created that you can attend that can jumpstart and be a genesis for mindsets.
Absolutely. I'd be happy to. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you.
Oh, this is a lot of fun. Thank you very much. And I wish you the best of luck.
Same to you.
Yep. Bye, everybody.